Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top stories. US President Donald Trump has stated that negotiations over the proposed peace plan for Gaza have been very successful and expects the first phase of the plan to be completed by the end of the week. French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu resigns just weeks after appointment. This also came hours after he unveiled the first names of his government. The French stocks dropped sharply, and as did the euro following news of the resignation. Activists detained by Israeli authorities from the Global Smooth flotilla continue returning home, with citizens of Spain, Tunisia landing in their home countries after being deported by Israel. Police are investigating the crime scene in Sydney's inner west after a man allegedly fired around 50 bullets at a passing car from his property, wounding at least 16 people. The suspect is under custody, and police have also recovered 2 rifles from the scene. 2 wildfires have destroyed nearly 400 hectares in the north of the French island of Corsica. According to authorities, nearly 180 firefighters, 50 vehicles, and 4 aircraft were mobilized to tackle the 2 blazes. Australia has signed a new defense agreement with Papua New Guinea, its first in more than 70 years, as Canberra seeks to block China from expanding its security presence in the Pacific. Under the Pukpuk Defense Treaty, which is the first signed by Papua New Guinea, Australia and its northern neighbor are obliged to come to each other's aid if attacked. The treaty allows as many as 10,000 Papua New Guineans to serve with the Australian Defence Force under dual arrangements. Thai Prime Minister Anutin Charnvirakul has ordered urgent flood relief after heavy rains killed 12 people and impacted over 100,000 households across 16 provinces, with Uttaradit province suffering the worst losses, according to the local interior ministry. A 17-year-old boy and 43-year-old women were killed while 14 others were injured in a shooting incident in Alabama's capital, Montgomery. Police say multiple individuals pulled out weapons and started firing after the first shots were fired. No arrests have been announced so far, and investigations is underway. Now we move on. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that Russia is trying to sabotage Ukraine's domestic gas production. He has also confirmed that recent strikes on Russian infrastructure used Ukrainian-made missiles. This comes as Russia launched a massive missile and drone attack on Ukraine, killing at least 5 people, including 4 in Lviv. Fire broke out, damaging infrastructure and leaving parts of Lviv without power. Meanwhile, Ukraine overnight has attacked Russia's Belgorod region and knocked out power to thousands. Crews have restored supply to most, but 5,400 people remain without electricity. In Russia's south, a fire broke out at a security building in the Tuapse oil refinery after a drone attack. Now for this discussion, we are joined by Professor Andrew Latham. He's a professor of international relations, joins us live from Minneapolis. Thank you, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, it seems like from both sides, the attacks keep escalating. What more can you tell us about this growing number of attacks?
Well, as the front line stabilizes, neither Russian nor Ukrainian forces are making any significant advances. Russia marginal, but at high cost. The real center of gravity in this conflict has shifted from the tactical to the strategic. And what that means is that Russia is looking to make this winter very uncomfortable for Ukrainians, very cold, hospitals shutting down, factories shutting down, apartments and houses not being heated, in order to undermine morale and undermine the capacity of the Ukrainians to sustain the efforts at the front line. On the other hand, the Ukrainians are looking to not freeze the Russians, but undermine their principal source of income, which is selling liquid natural gas and oil products on the international market. And so they're going after that infrastructure using increasingly homemade Ukrainian long-range weapons, although they would love to get hands on the U.S. Tomahawk cruise missile that would really enhance their reach, as it were. So the bottom line is shifting really the focus from the battlefield, which is frozen, to this strategic level in which both sides are going after each other's home front in different ways.
And how is the growing number of these attacks, including the drone sightings across Europe, is impacting the development of new security measures and defense measures at critical infrastructures in Ukraine and Europe as well?
Well, in Europe, the concern is that if this war were to expand by some accident, probably, then the Europeans are not prepared for a war with Russia. They're not prepared for the kind of war that has evolved, which is small, very small units. It's called trickle tactics. If you have more than 2 or 3 soldiers at the front, they become targets for drone attacks. So you have very small units, and you have lots of drones. You have complete visibility of everything in the battle space. Nothing can be hidden anymore. And Europe's armies aren't configured or equipped or trained for that kind of war. So they're having to reconstitute, as it were, having to get their act together so that they are ready for not the Second World War, not the war against the Soviet Union, but the war that might happen going forward. Ukrainians have already adapted. The Russians have already adapted. And they've left NATO Europe far, far behind.
How do you think, how long will it take to catch up for Europe to what the stage that you have mentioned that Russians have adapted and Ukrainians have adapted to?
Well, it will take a long time because it will take, the manuals have to be rewritten, people have to be retrained, units and structures have to be reorganized. It has to be said that a lot of the weapons that Europe would rely on in a shooting war against Russia are being sold to the Ukrainians at the moment. So it's not like the magazines are full, they're kind of empty. So it will take a massive and long-run restructuring. The sooner the Europeans get on that, the better. I'm not suggesting that war will break out with the Russians anytime soon. I think the Russians have their hands full with Ukraine, but one never knows. One never knows what incident or accident could expand this war beyond Russia and Ukraine.
Yes, indeed. And given the slower pace of democratic countries, especially Europe, to advance or to enhance in these things, how do you think they will be navigating between their democratic values and advancing their military and defense capabilities?
It's always been a tricky balance in post-World War II Europe. On the one hand, militarization of the kind that existed in many countries before World War II is really a thing of the past. You don't have universal national service or conscription. The Americans call it the draft. You don't have that in most countries. And even if you have it on the books, it hasn't been enforced very rigorously. So the ability to mobilize European populations, that's going to have to be rethought. And that's a tricky balance because it cuts against democracy and kind of post-military values in Europe. And then, of course, there is the guns for butter trade-off. The more money that you spend on healthcare and education and things like that, the less money you have available to invest in defense. Weapons training, supplying troops, etc. So there are a number of balances that have to be struck. After the Cold War, it was easy for Europeans. They thought war was over. The Russians were not a real threat. The Soviet Union was gone. They could divert all the money from defense to welfare state spending. And now they're realizing that that was a big mistake, and they're having to reallocate resources and shift their attention from the home front, as it were, to the potential front line with Russia in the future. And that's going to be painful.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Professor Andrew for joining us and sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on this region now. Now we move on to Middle East. Iran's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghei has said that Iran welcomes any initiative that can stop what he called a genocide and allow aid to reach Palestinians. But he has warned that the latest peace plan poses serious dangers for Palestine and the wider region. Bagheri added that Iran has no immediate plans for negotiations with the West, though diplomatic contacts remain ongoing. He has also condemned the detention of an Iranian citizen in France, calling it illegal, while confirming talks are underway over a potential prisoner exchange involving French detainees held in Iran. Let's listen into what Ismail Bagheri, spokesperson of Iran, has said.
ما از هر ابتکار عملی که در این مرحله منجر بشه به توقف نسل‌کشی در غزه و فراهم آوردن امکان کمک رسانی به مردم مظلوم فلسطین اشغالی استقبال می‌کنیم. ما نسبت به این طرح نگرانی‌های جدی داریم. هشدار دادیم در بیانیه‌مون نسبت به خطرات و مسائل جدی که می‌تواند به بهانه پیگیری این طرح برای فلسطین و برای مردم فلسطین و منطقه.
Now for this discussion, we go back to Professor Andrew Latham. He's a professor of international relations, joins us live from Minneapolis. Thank you, Professor, for staying with us. Now, Iran has once again called for or welcomed someone to negotiate peace and also without naming any country. And also we have seen something similar back in UNGA. They mentioned, they thanked some countries, but without directly mentioning who is Iran suggesting over here? Which country are they hinting to?
Well, I think they're signaling to a number of different constituencies, both at home and abroad. I think we have to put this in the context of both Iran and the Gulf Arab states that are in a competition for dominance in the Persian Gulf region are also vying for influence and maybe even leadership within the so-called global South. And that generates some cross-cutting pressures. On the one hand, if this Trump plan bears fruit, that's an open question, but if it does, nobody wants to be on the wrong side of history. Nobody wants to be seen as not participating in this peace process. So both Iran and the Gulf Cooperation Council states, notably Qatar and Saudi Arabia, are saying, yes, we support this peace process. On the other hand, if it goes wrong, or if it shakes out in ways that hurt the Palestinian people, nobody wants to be entirely associated with that either. So there's always the caveat. Yes, we are in favor of this peace process, but there are serious problems with it with respect to Palestinian self-governance, etc., that need to be addressed. And so we see signals coming out of Tehran, we see signals coming out of Riyadh and various other capitals that are mixed. On the one hand, yes, we're in favor of this peace process, we hope it works. On the other hand, but if it doesn't, or it doesn't address all of our issues, well, we have some concerns.
Right. And what do you think about the strained relations or escalating relations between France and Iran? Do you think there can be any other country that can negotiate peace, or do you think some U.S. will have to again comment or bring both of them to negotiating table?
I think we need to look at the powers that are actually consequential, that have the relationships. And when I look at that map, I see the United States as the only great power with significant influence, perhaps with China as a second-tier player, and perhaps Russia if it weren't so distracted by the war in Ukraine and other issues. France, with all due respect to my French friends and colleagues, is simply not relevant in this equation. I doubt very much that anybody in Iran, except out of desperation, is listening to what Paris has to say, or London for that matter, and certainly Berlin. I mean, they're not serious players in this particular theater of operations. The US, definitely, China, perhaps, and then of course the regional players, Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, etc. President Macron has his own, as you just covered, his own domestic issues that he's dealing with at the moment. I rather suspect that this is an effort to distract the French public from those problems.
With that, I would like to thank Professor Andrew Latham for joining us and sharing that insight all the way from Minneapolis. Thank you. Now we move on and we stay in Middle East. Israeli citizens gathered at the Nir Oz Kibbutz near the Gaza Strip to honor those killed and taken hostage during the Hamas assault on October 7, 2023. According to reports, nearly 25% of kibbutz residents were either killed or kidnapped when terrorists stormed Israel's border defenses, dragging 251 hostages back to Gaza Strip. As of today, 48 hostages remain in Hamas's custody, of which 20 are alive. Meanwhile, Israelis at the ceremony have reflected on the trauma of the attack. The October 7, 2023 attack killed over 1,200 Israelis, while Israel's retaliation has claimed more than 67,000 Palestinian lives. Let's listen in.
מציינים את היום שבו הכל התפרק, והם כאן במרחק נגיעה זועקים וקולם לא נשמע. 731 ימים, בשבילנו שנתיים ובשבילם נצח, שאנו מנסים להשיבם בכל דרך, זועקים, מוחים, שובתים, מתפללים, והם עדיין לא כאן. תמיר, רונן, איתן, זלמן, צ'רצ'יל, מתן, אריאל, דוד וקופר שנחטפו מכאן, ועוד 39 חטופים וחטופה. כולם ולא אחד פחות. אולי אין בכוחנו להשיבם והלוואי ויש. אך בכוחנו ומחובתנו להמשיך לנסות. בכוחנו לצעוק. זה לא נורמלי! בכוחנו לקרוא בשמותיהם ולהציג את תמונותיהם בכל זמן ובכל מקום. בכוחנו להשמיע קול שיחצה עד אליהם וייתן אוויר ליום נוסף בגיהנום.
Now we move on to Asia. Thai Prime Minister Anun Charnvirakul has ordered urgent relief efforts after flooding triggered by days of heavy rain and storms hit 16 provinces over the past week. The floods in the country have killed 12 people and affected more than 100,000 households. Officials have visited villages to distribute relief aid. Floodwaters have been seen as high as the housing level of stilt houses. The Interior Ministry has said that the floods inundated parts of the northern, central, and northeastern Thailand. The Uttaradit province in the upper northern region, where 5 people have been killed, is among the worst hit. Last year, 22 people were killed by flash floods and mudslides caused by monsoon rains across Thailand. Now we move on. Indian and Russian troops have kicked off the Indra 2025 joint military exercises at the Mahajan training range in Rajasthan, India. The drills running until October 15 focus on enhancing cooperation in counterterrorism operations. Senior commanders from both countries attended the opening ceremony, including Russia's General Andrei Kozlov and India's General Sanjay Chandra. The Indra series, initiated in 2003, aims to improve interoperability across land, air, and naval forces, strengthening defense ties and develop joint capabilities. The exercises reflect the long-standing strategic partnership between India and Russia, highlighting their commitment to combating international terrorism and enhancing regional security. Now for this discussion, we are joined by retired Major General Sudhakarji. He's a senior geopolitical and strategic defense expert, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General Sudhakarji, for joining us again. Good to see you. Can you give us a little bit of history behind Russia and India's cooperation and also Indra exercises?
Yeah, Soma, good evening. Thank you for getting me for your show.
Thank you.
And with regard to the question you have raised, right since independence, India has had diplomatic relationship with Russia, but it picked up momentum in early 60s. And thereafter, when it came closer to 70s, let's take the mind of our viewers back to the military operation which was unleashed against India by Pakistan in 1971, and it is during the operations of 1971 that the strategic partnership came to the limelight between India and Russia. So Russia, when India was being threatened by the 7th Fleet of USA, Russians came to the rescue of India and they gave support to Indian armed forces. And it is with resolve, focus and determination and total dedication of the Indian armed forces that we beat the Pakistanis and we won the war of 1971 operations. During the war, 93,000 prisoners of Pakistan had been apprehended by India. They stayed with India for quite some time and subsequently they handed over back safely to Pakistan. But by and by, since 1971 till 2000, there are multiple verticals and heads in which India and Russia have collaborated, be it of aircrafts, our dependency with regard to the defense forces has increased significantly. It had gone up to a percentage of almost about 86% of our total procurement of military hardware from any one country. And when it came to the early part of 2000, with the insurgency and terrorism picking up momentum towards Jammu and Kashmir, and subsequently it is lingering on till as late as 2025, there are many notable achievements which have taken place. One of the notable achievements is the joint collaboration of the BrahMos. The BrahMos, as we all know, it's a cruise missile. It has been developed co-jointly between Russia and India. Today, it is one of the best sellers as far as the armed forces product indigenously produced by India and being sold to foreign countries. Philippines is the first country where this transfer of this equipment has taken place. And there are many bidders for this weapon system after Operation Sindoor, because the effectiveness of this weapon platform has been seen. Besides that, being the largest military hardware importer from Russia, whether it is tanks or the guns or the aircrafts or the logistic aircrafts, IL-76 or the Su series aircrafts, or you talk about the MiG series, MiG-21, though it has been outdated, and MiG-29 is the central frame in our naval resources as also the Air Force resources. So what has happened is from 2003, this joint exercise of Indra has come about to bring in some degree of interoperability and in respect of all the three services, Army, Navy, Air Force. So Indra is a biannual, meaning there are two important exercises in a year and at a gap of approximately 6 months. It could be naval exercise, it could be Air Force, it could be Army. Currently, what is going on is a very important exercise in Rajasthan. It is a joint exercise between 250 troops of Russia and equal number, if not more, of India in a place called Mahajan Field Firing Ranges in Rajasthan state in the western border. Their basic aim and objective is centering around the counter-terrorism operation under United Nations mandate. In the counter-terrorist operation, they would be expected to carry out the tactical level cooperation and coordination. Besides that, there are many other issues with regard to command, control, communication and coordination and interoperability of the weapon system, of the communication system, of the alternatives to different means and methods which are adopted for implementation of any executive order once the planning has been made. Back to you, Asuma.
And building on that, given the long-standing strategic partnership, even you've mentioned even before this, Russia and India started gaining momentum in 1960s. What role do these Indra joint military exercises play in reinforcing defense ties and addressing emerging global security challenges for both countries?
Excellent question. Very pointed answer to your question is the global order is evolving. There is a huge churn. Bipolarity of 20th century has actually given into multipolarity, maybe for a temporary period. But what has happened in past 6 months, or the preceding 6 months in the world order, it gives me enough of reasons and justification to believe that perhaps the world order is evolving into bipolar, that is USA and China. Rest all are yet to attain the status of multipolar poles, which is to be called as polycentric world way back in First and Second World War. So in a circumstance like this, Russia being a P5 member and an evergreen friend of India, it is called, for lack of correct expression, higher than the Everest and deeper than the ocean. It's some kind of an evergreen and everlasting friendship, strategic partner of Russia, and with special relationship, India has been building up its bonding with this country on multiple purposes. Because in times of criticality, it is Russia which has stood by India and extended a helping hand. And Russia as a country, after the disintegration of USSR, when the Cold War 2.0 started, having taken over the mantleship of the previous USSR or the Soviet Union status, the country has extended all kinds of assistance and support in terms of military hardware, space technology, or co-joint and co-development of any armament, communication system, and joint know-how of technological powers that Russia had, and it has actually come to the rescue of India in worst of times. So therefore, it actually brings me to the point that the kind of support on which India has been building up its relationship in the changing world order, there is only one reliable partner as far as India is concerned, and that partner is Russia, time-tested partner. In addition to Russia, of course, we have Israel, but I would say, I would bet for Russia because it is a kind of a relationship which actually makes me not to look back but to look ahead with very progressive, forward-looking and very objective development towards India's growth story to become a global power by 2047 or earlier than that.
And you have mentioned that Russia and India's relationship has gone through challenges and tests, and it's proven. How do you see this relationship especially this year, Trump administration has been poking this relationship. How do you see U.S.'s interference in this relationship?
You see, in changing world order, mindful of the fact that USA is a declining superpower, USA itself is loaded with multiple challenges in the homeland. The internal stability is a big question as far as USA is concerned. And while its internal challenges cannot be addressed, it is actually, destabilizing the whole world order in form of tariff and host of other issues, and imposing irrelevant tariffs on India, a country like India, on grounds of buying fossil fuel from Russia is highly unjustifiable, because at the time of invasion of Ukraine by Russian forces, way back in February 2024, it is at the behest of America and the Western Alliances countries that India had resorted to buying oil from Russia so as to stabilize the oil price in the world order or the world market. So it is not understood as to how and why America has imposed this tariff, which is a very big and substantive trigger as far as relationship is concerned. Number two, America itself is buying uranium and also its economic commercial activities with Russia between January 2020 and now, in past 8 to 9 months time during Trump 2.0, the economy has actually rebounded and grown by 20% as far as America and Russia is concerned. So to say that India is a country which is to be penalized and it is because of India, the war in Ukraine is actually being given impetus and being stimulated, it's a highly incorrect I would say, start point to build your argument on.
Yes.
So despite all challenges which America is imposing on India and the relationship having taken not such a very progressive and collaborative one as was expected from Donald Trump 2.0, India, in my opinion, will go ahead with regard to buying of oil. It will not budge under pressure from USA. It will continue to buy the warheads and the military hardware as heretofore. It will continue to do business with Russia as usual without any changes or modification. These issues are actually bound and driven by the foreign policy philosophy of India,
Yes.
which is called as the strategic autonomy. What it means is, while we respect multipolarity as a country, we have respect and we comply with the principles of multi-alignment so as to meet the national interest of India. That cannot be compromised. America at no point in time can either put pressure on Russia nor in India. So in evolving world order, what I see is that Russia, despite the economic sanctions, which are numbering to almost more than 26,000 between 2014 and now, and despite all kinds of restrictions imposed on Russia, the war hasn't come to an end between Ukraine and Russia. Therefore, America and the Western alliances have to be more pragmatic and more, I would say, they should apply themselves in a more creative manner to bring this mindless conflict to an end as early as possible. Rather than adopting measures against India, they should actually look at other issues from the Western alliances by creating a long-lasting security architecture from the Europe and between Europe and Russia. Back to you, Asif.
Yes. With that, I would like to thank Major General Sudakarji for always joining us and sharing that insight. Very valuable, great hearing from you always. Thank you very much. Now we move on to North America. American scientists Mary Brunko and Fred Ramsdell and Shimon Sakaguchi from Japan won the 2025 Nobel Prize in Medicine on Monday for work shedding light on how the immune system spares healthy cells, creating openings for possible new autoimmune disease and cancer treatments. The laureates identified so-called regulatory cells, T cells, which act as the immune system security guards that keep immune cells from attacking our own body. The winners for medicine are selected by the Nobel Assembly of Sweden's Karolinska Institute Medical University and receive a prize sum of $1.2 million, as well as a gold medal presented by Sweden's king. This is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more news updates from around the world.